Greetings, everybody. Welcome to Kansas City. And Walt, just slide in this way a little bit so that you come into the camera. So I'm going to let people introduce themselves. And oh, Tom is behind the camera. I can see you there. Okay. So last year at this symposium in Atlanta, I had a special interest night session that was titled Rethinking Demonstrations Using Live Video. And the way this all started was I got this call from Mike Hunter, who's sitting in the back row there. And what happened was he said, you know, we had a couple of remote demonstrations. One went really well, and one didn't go so well. And he said, you're kind of a geek, you know, the techno geek, and you know, maybe you can help us kind of figure out best practices for doing this. And so I set out to try to figure out what's a reasonable way of having demonstrators learn how to demonstrate remotely and how clubs can receive remote demonstrations. And about a week after that session, Lyle did his first remote demonstration, I think to Emiliano's group in Maui. And this year we want to change it up a little bit. This year it isn't me saying, here's why you should do this and why you should consider doing this. Now it's a matter of some people have done it. This isn't breaking new ground. We want to find out what the reaction of people in the audience has been to demonstrations that have been done, what we'd like to change, what the members, the audiences have said, what their comments are. And so Lyle is here with me and on my right, and he's done how many demonstrations now? About 9 or so?
Oh, well, I've connected over 30 times now with both the tests and the actual demos.
Right.
Probably actual demo times, probably 12 or 14, something like that.
Well, that's terrific. And Walt is with the group here in Missouri.
Woodturners of St. Louis.
Right, and so he's using the same kind of setup that I use and that Lyle uses and that some other people are using as a club setup. Because, you know, I remember getting a call from someone that said, the guy with the video camera moved away. And now we need to do something. So what we're trying to do is get people to rethink the way you do these demonstrations, even within your club. Forgetting about remote demonstrations for a moment. The same type of setup that we're using to do remote demonstrations can be a club setup. And the same thing that you could do to broadcast a video call, you could use to record. So several clubs have set up things very similar to what I've set up. And one of the things that I did with the particular software that I prefer is I've got keyboard shortcuts. So if I press the number 1 key, camera 1 goes to the output screen. If I press number 2 key, let's see, that's number 1. I press number 2, the second camera goes out. I press number 3, and the third camera goes out. And then, so the first row was all about the main screen. And the second row underneath it, the QWER, if you think of those rows and columns, will take, the first one will put camera 1 into the inset, second one puts camera 2 into the inset, third one puts camera 3 into the inset. So it makes it very, very easy to control the cameras. And rather than have everybody try to figure out how to do this, I said, well, just let me know and I'll send you my shortcuts and you can install it. And I usually work with a remote keyboard, so I can do the same thing from here, which is useful. And I've got this literally magnetic strips on it on the back of my of the keyboard. I can put it on the headstock of the lathe, so I don't have to reach across to the computer If I go into the next room, which is my assembly room, I take this with me and I put a webcam in there. So what I've tried to do is make it dead simple. And I kidded last year that said Lyle has the computer savvy that he doesn't know which end of the computer to blow into to get it to play music. You know, that's his that's his experience, right? So we're trying to make it very, very easy for people. Now, some of it's pretty complicated, but it's not that it's daunting, it's just that it's unfamiliar. It's something that you didn't grow up with. If you had to write down the instructions on how to pull a car out of a driveway, and you gave a set of keys to someone that grew up on a desert island that doesn't know what the concept of a lock is, and which piece of metal do you put into what hole, and which direction do you turn, if you had to write down the instructions, it'd be so complicated you wouldn't even try to teach anybody how to do this. But it's familiar to them because they've watched people do it all of their lives. So this stuff is no more complicated than anything that you do with the lathe. You do things in a procedure. And here it's a matter of trying to figure out what you want to do. So I'm expanding it tonight to also include things that are not demonstrations. Things that are, hey, I'm going down into the shop for a while. Would you like to watch? Saying to your friends on Facebook or on a YouTube channel. And I ran across Roper, and Roper, let me just switch over to camera one. Roper just waved to people there. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you something. He is probably the fastest turner I've ever seen. And so here's a video. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this out here, and I'm going to play this. And let's see how this works out. And so you can see how fast he is. And this he posted on Facebook only a couple of days ago. And so this wasn't a class. This was him playing in the shop. And your Facebook post said, "Oh, I came up with a new camera mount, and I want to experiment with it." So how many of you can turn a top that fast? So Roper, why don't you sort of explain how you've been doing Facebook videos and why you're doing it and such?
Okay, my name is Michael Roper. Thank you very much for having me here. I've been turning for about 10 years now. I teach at the local community college in Lakewood, Colorado, Red Rocks Community College. And actually, I got into videos for the first time by shooting a video for Craftsy. They're a organization out of Denver, Colorado, and they do baking videos and sewing videos, and they've started to get into woodworking. So that was my first experience in front of the camera. Mm-hmm. Since then, I've shot a few YouTube videos, and lately I've had people asking me about doing live feeds and things like that. So the other day, I had a half an hour in my shop, and I made a overhead camera mount for my lathe, and I just started messing around with videos. And I will not lie, when I shot that video was the first time I found out that my iPhone had a time-lapse setting on it. And I was like, this is phenomenal. I will have a good time with this. Alan got a hold of me, which I was quite shocked and happy about, that people are paying attention to the videos that I'm making. And I enjoy it. I like it because not everybody can come to my studio and see me turn. But you can come onto my website or onto my Facebook page and see me turn live or see me do a video on a project that I'm working on. And what I really enjoy about it is that it seems to have taken what is a large world and made it so much smaller, that I can have people from around the world in my shop with me, but they're not physically there. So it's a win-win for me. I love it that I can be out there in the world. I can pass on the art of wood turning to more people. And really,
you teach wood turning at a local school, right?
I do, at the local community college. I teach introduction and intermediate wood turning, which is a great way to get with the community, get with younger people, which is really kind of my draw with wood turning. It's not that I'm not trying to get everyone into wood turning, but specifically I am trying to get younger people into it. Technology seems to be a great way to get younger people into it. Like you, I'm sure you see everybody's face down into their phone, and if that's where I need to be to show you how to do wood turning, I can do that for you. And if you're not going to change with the times, then you're going to kind of get run over by it.
Now, by the way, I've been fussing with the camera here because I just realized that the AAW camera with Hoyle is playing with, it's got face tracking. And so we've got these squares coming up around everybody's faces. So I don't know how to turn it off, but if you can figure out how to turn it off, Hoyle.
I will attempt.
That will, yeah, there's probably an output menu. So if you can figure that out, that would be terrific. And this is the joys of doing live stuff, especially with equipment that is not yours. And so while he's doing that, let me show you some pictures that Roper sent over the other day. And so what he did is he's just using an iPhone. And he got a selfie stick and, wrong one. And so you mounted the selfie stick, and that's pretty much it. And so the minimal equipment is, hey, I've got a phone. And a phone, particularly an iPhone or an Android phone, think of them as battery-powered, high-definition cameras that focus to 2 inches and have a light right next to the lens. Last year, I showed looking into a little tiny hollow form with doing that. Let's see, Gil, can you do me a small favor, and can you just kind of come into the middle of the audience here, because the camera's not seeing you. You're hiding on that side.
I can't do that.
You can't do that? Because you're such a shy, demure person, Gil.
My question was, on that last
Yeah, go ahead.
frame you showed, one phone, was it?
Yeah, there was just one phone.
And it was for YouTube?
That
Didn't have to go to...
that was
computer.
Facebook Live.
That's what my question was. Didn't have to go to a computer, it was directly to the phone.
They used to.
Yeah, you can grab the other microphone.
I did.
Yeah.
I do.
So that's, in fact, you can hold on to that too if you want.
Okay?
Yeah.
Oh, thank
Hold on, because I'm sure you'll have more to say.
Oh,
And so when people do talk, if you can just kind of find your way into the center so that we can see, you see Hannes is hiding on that side and such. I've got a 90-degree camera here, but we're kind of wide. Yeah, go ahead.
Once again, if he wanted to do an overview and an end view, he'd have 2 phones. Would that work?
No,
That's a whole
for going straight from a phone app to Facebook, it only supports 1 camera feed. That's why we use programs like this vMix, which is a mixing program that says, let me take the camera feeds, let me take photos, let me take videos, let me take PowerPoint decks. Right now, what I have in front of me, and I can show you that in a little bit, actually has 19 inputs. But the system that I recommend for people only has 4 inputs, typically 3 cameras and a folder of photos, or 3 cameras and a PowerPoint deck, or 3 cameras and a
Audio.
audio or just anything else. And so let's do Walt. Walt has let's see if I just go to camera 2. Oops. Camera 2. So Walt, why don't you talk about your club and what you're doing with the setup?
Well, we had the old computer projector and analog cameras, and for the projector to work, you had to have the lights dim, and you put a spotlight on the lathe, and then it washed out all the cameras. It was just terrible. So we finally went high def, and we got two computer monitors and mounted those on some cabinets. And
I'll show you pictures in a second.
And we still use the old analog cameras, and that helped. But we wanted to go to HD. So, and copying the system here seemed to get us, people are a lot happier with the quality of the video. It's a lot sharper. We do miss our Zoom, but on the camcorders, but that's about it.
It looks like Hoyle got it working. Oh, boy, okay. So,
And you can add a low-cost video camera to that. So.
Right, yeah, well.
yeah, and one of the reasons why I recommend webcams is that you can bring in camcorders, but you need this little device here that costs $300 per camera. So it's nice to have, and I use an action camera as a body camera. That's kind of fun, but I don't necessarily recommend that because the webcams run between $59 and about $100 a piece, and they focus to 2 inches, and they're quite terrific. But let me show you a little bit about Waltz Setup. And so here, what I recommend for most turners is to have 3 cameras. One camera is probably the camera in the lid of the computer, or the lid of the notebook computer, which can sit on top of your headstock, or you could use a webcam, but you already have a built-in camera. It's not all that important if you're in a club situation because people can actually look at you. But if you're remote, you want to be able to talk directly to the audience. One camera should be above the lathe, pointed down. And so, let me show you back here. So here he's got a camera on a microphone stand, on a boom. The nice thing about these little webcams is that they only weigh like 2 ounces. You don't need big supports. You don't need big articulated booms. In my shop, I use a boom arm with a 18-inch flexible gooseneck. So it's very easy just to push the camera around, and these cameras also have, let me see if I go here, they also have little tilts on them, so it's very easy to move the camera. And so if I go back to this one here, and so the next one here shows the entire setup. And so he's got a monitor on the left, a monitor on the right. He's got a camera mounted above the lathe that's typically set at fixed focus. So every time you move your hand in and out, it's not trying to search for your hand, search for the bed of the lathe, search for your hand. And I typically take the second camera, the movable camera, and leave it on autofocus. Sometimes you want to lock the focus, and that's easy to do too. And so here's another setup.
Movable camera. What does that mean?
The movable, the one that's not sort of fixed focus above the lathe. The one that's, in my case, on a microphone stand that is easy to move around. And all of my cameras are actually on quick releases. So if I have a couple of different places that I want them to be, I can literally click it off of here and then move it onto another mount. The quick releases are like $9 a piece. So rather than move the tripod from here to there, we'll just have another stand there and just click it off of here, put it over there. Very, very easy. Let's see, Walt, move back in if you don't mind. You were perfect just where you were.
Oh.
I'm sorry, not Walt, Hoyle. And so that's the little quick release at the bottom of the camera. And so it's very, very nice. Hoyle, not Hoyle, Walt had also annotated his shot. So if I go here, so you've seen that shot, and then he did this here. So I'll just zoom in a little bit. So you can see that he's got 2 50-inch monitors, an HDMI splitter to split out between the 2 monitors. He's got a camera on a tripod. I recommend a microphone stand because you're not kicking the legs of the tripod. And they've got a weighted base, and they're cheap. He's got a laptop that's got the mixing software on it. I use vMix. He's got a webcam at 930 above it. And then up here, it says someone that answered a cell phone call during a meeting. So we were wondering, who that guy was. And so that's Walt's annotation. That's not mine. Yeah, that's right.
He's hanging out.
And so that's simple enough. And now, Emiliano, are you still there?
Of course.
Just making sure that we didn't lose you. Let's talk. Let's talk about Lyle's setup? Because I think it's interesting to see how people have set this stuff up. This isn't brain surgery, but people have set these up in different ways. So, Lyle, let me show the pictures that David sent over. And so this was a setup. In fact, Dave, why don't you sort of annotate this? And if you don't mind, just come in the middle of the of this here. So this would be
right
here, right? No, that's
right.
not going to work. your head's cut off. So why don't you sit right over there someplace?
Move the chair over
okay,
in the aisle.
sit
Yeah.
right there.
Well, they're hooked together.
Okay.
Oh, well,
There we go.
he's good. Okay.
Okay, right.
All right.
Okay, hi everybody, I'm David Buskell. I'm a member of Team Woodturners in the UK. We're twinned with Central Oklahoma Woodturners. In the UK, about 3 or 4 years ago, we started playing around with demonstrations for people's studios, and not very much success until about two years ago, and when we managed to get one studio shot going to about a dozen different recipients around the country. Unfortunately, the guy who was running the experiment had to withdraw for personal reasons, and that sort of put an end to that. We looked at Facebook Live, but you don't get interaction, unfortunately, as well as you should do, and the same thing on YouTube. I strolled into the last 10 minutes of Alan's rotation last year. I thought, wow, this is the way to go. Spoke with Alan afterwards. He's also been very helpful to us in sort of explaining what we want and everything, so it was good. Went back to the club, said, yes, we need to do this. They thought, oh, yes, it's a great idea. And the guy you see there in the brown shirt is Bob Higgins, our events manager. He was initially sceptical, saying it wouldn't work. So one wintry December's day, we turned up at a venue called Epsom College, which is about 5 miles from our own club, where we've been doing some mentoring. The advantage of the college is they have a mathematics suite with laptop, Epsom projector, screen, high-speed, hard-wired broadband, and an IT support guy. So we thought, great, we'll hire that for me, see if that's any good. And if you could backtrack on those photos for a second, please, Alan.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out the best way to do this.
That first one with Bob staring at
here,
the
what I'm going to do here is take this out here. Give me a second.
Yeah.
Because I want to go here.
Yeah, this one. This is the one that was the photo that was taken on test day. Bob was absolutely amazed, and he was standing 6 foot away from the video screen but talking to Lyle 3,500 to 4,000 miles away. He's not got over that yet. And literally said, great, okay, I'm sold on the idea, we're going to book it. And I think the next day you got a call from them saying, we want you, when we can come. Cut a long story short, the demonstration took place in April of this year. Our timing was appalling because we used a different venue, we used a different time of day, we used the college where it was and it was also half-term week, so we managed, the capacity of the room is 25. We managed to go at 17, 18, I can't remember what the number was, from our own club team plus 5 other clubs, so we sort of spread the word in the UK, if you like. We're also the first club in the UK to do this. If you've seen Woodturning, there's a copy of the article in there. I've got the magazine here. But we're all amazed at the quality. You can see Lyle there in the 3-screen shot. The one thing I found difficult, because I was sort of at the back of the hall running around with the microphone, was actually getting good quality shots off screen. But Alan is going to tell me how to do that later on, because we had some very interesting discussions with GMC Publications. So if Mark Baker's here, he can tell you about that. About the quality of the photos. The ones taken in the room with Bob and the others you see were fine. These here were taken off the screen, but luckily my cousin Steve is a bit of a photo geek and managed to edit them so we could see what was going on. So that's that one. Okay.
So what was interesting is that on a couple of the UK discussion forums, for months in advance, people were telling us how this wasn't going to work. We don't have the bandwidth, people aren't going to come, and the people that have actually done this, it does work.
Yeah, well, I think most of the flack that we got, and there were some very nasty comments from certain people who shall be nameless.
This was before the session.
This is actually before the session, saying you shouldn't do this, you're taking our livelihood away, etc., etc., how dare you. The rest of it is not repeatable in polite company. And I'm not joking on that. So we thought, well, so what, you know. As I say to somebody at the reception, you know, the last time I was at work was 2004, and by business we had video conferencing between the offices in London. That was 2000 to 2004. When we walked into Epsom College for the test transmission in December, said, oh great, we use this all the time for our teaching, our education. You know, we have people delivering maths courses from Hong Kong, from Singapore, wherever. So woodturning again is just about catching up with the existing technology. And obviously, even in that short time, technology has moved on.
So one of the keys here is I had a discussion last year here, actually up in the Instant Gallery with a woodturner who was convinced that I can do a better demonstration at the club than I can doing it remotely. And that was kind of an interesting approach, but I explained to him that I used to be a commercial photographer, and I had, most of my photographs were done with an 8x10 view camera on a 10-foot camera stand. And it can make a higher quality image than my 35mm cameras, which were very good. But it didn't matter that it made a better quality image if you can't have the camera with you. So all of the pictures that I would never have taken with that high quality camera, you know, doesn't do you any good. There's an old joke I mentioned earlier about a woman goes to a butcher and she says, how much are your chickens? And the butcher says they're 29 cents a pound. She says, yeah, but the guy across the street has a sign, he's got them for 19 cents a pound. And he said, why don't you go over there? And she said, well, he doesn't have any. So he said, I can sell you all the ones I don't have for $0.05 a pound. You see, so it doesn't make a difference how good your presentation can be if you're never going to give the presentation. So the idea here from a club standpoint is that if you're a program chairman or chairwoman, you now have the ability to reach out literally across the globe, and to not have to worry about whether or not your demonstrator is within driving distance of you, and not have to worry about canceled flights. There are other logistical things to worry about. There's no question. But from a demonstrator standpoint, it's like, oh my God, now there are these audiences out there that I can reach that I couldn't afford to go to. I couldn't afford the time to go to California for a 2-hour evening club demo. And Lyle, I think, will have an interesting story. You did 2 in one evening, right? Yeah. And we'll talk about that in a second. So what I want to do is I want to show Lyle's setup. Well, Lyle made a little video the other day, which he shot vertically. Try to shoot your videos horizontally. So I'll show you.
Lucky he got that. I don't know how to even use my phone.
Workstation.
All right, so you listen
I have
here.
all my tools and lathe and sharpening and everything within arm's reach of my lathe. I have the camera set up on a little higher platform here so that it's kind of looking down, and that way it's not, the camera on my laptop is not looking up into the lights and looking down at it. Then I can see the pad board where I'm doing doodles and showing drawings and talking about shape and design, whatever. I've got a camera right over the bed so that it's on a magic arm, so I can move around and see the shape of the vessel as it's developing. I have another camera that is on a boom and mobile. This is the one I move around. I can have this looking right over my shoulder at the cuts that I'm making and get it on the angles that is needed to best capture the methods.
So
Okay,
Lyle,
we'll
why don't you talk about your experiences with the clubs and 1 second, Gil, what's the question?
The frame, was it because that was the frame I saw, was it because of a phone being used?
Yeah, he
Right.
just shot
I-
with the phone this way,
Okay.
and I had to rotate it so that it doesn't wind up on
Okay.
the side here.
Thank
Just pass the microphone back that way, please.
Okay, I was just going to say something before
Oh,
you
yeah,
said.
go ahead.
One thing that we found was a great advantage. Obviously, you see the demo and you think, oh, I've got to ask a question or something. Lyle was very good. He sent us a whole load of handouts beforehand, copy of the demonstration on DVD. So that's now anybody who wants to look back and say, well, why do we use Facebook, turn between sectors or whatever, I can't remember off the top of my head. Yeah, it's there for reference, so that if anybody is thinking about doing this from a demonstrator's point of view, that helps the clubs enormously. Okay, and thank you very much. It was a great time.
Okay, Pat?
Yeah.
Oh, no, he's already got the microphone.
Okay, I got one. What are you?
And who, what's your name?
My name's Pat Griffin, and I'm also an ex-photographer, by the way. But we all have a past life.
Yep.
What are you using to bring all the different camera feeds into the computer?
Okay, I'm using, in my case, there's any
Well,
number
you're
of programs
using
that'll do
vMix,
that.
but I mean, what kind of what are you, obviously you're feeding it in, what, HDMI into one of the ports?
No, the webcams come in USB.
Okay, so
And
you're,
I've only got one HDMI camera coming in through a Magewell adapter.
okay, so you're running USBs for two of the cameras.
And
And
one
one-
Magewell adapter here, yeah.
Okay.
And we'll get into the technical stuff, and I've got stuff set up here, a very basic setup here and a very complicated setup over here, that we can deal with. So let's go back to the, and I really love talking tech and equipment.
Well, we have two HD cameras, actually three HD cameras that we use for our system, and they're all HDMI.
Right, and I recommend that people reconsider that, because unless you want to spend $900 for the total of 3 HDMI captures, which you need USB 3 ports for, you can get pretty much the same thing with $59 webcams. So there's some interesting, you don't have optical zoom, but
Right.
you and I probably go back to the days before big zoom lenses, that if you wanted the image to be bigger, you took 2 steps forward.
That's
Got
correct.
closer to your subject. With these webcams, it's very easy to move the camera to where you need it to be. You
Right.
don't have to be back 12 feet.
We have
and
two of
zooming.
our cameras fixed to our frame, our safety frame,
Yeah,
and then one is movable.
okay.
But they're all HD that we're using, and we run all 3 inputs into an HDMI switch,
Yep,
and then the HDMI switch to our projector.
right, and you have a nice delay between each HDMI switch? Yeah, all right. Well,
This
we'll
whole
talk about the
thing,
issues
this,
later.
this whole thing is way over my head, and I'm doing it. It's way over my head. I have no idea what you guys are talking about, and I don't need to. Right? We have a keep it simple thing, and I'm a living proof that it doesn't take talent or ability to do something. With Alan as my coach, it's learnable, and we just narrowed it down into what do we need to do and how do we need to keep it simple. I've got the changing equipment and the cameras on my end, and the club has just a laptop hooked up to the monitor. It's simple stuff. It's
And
not.
typically a webcam so that you can, or use the camera in the laptop so that you can see them. That's important.
Now,
This is a video phone call.
the computer is hardwired into an Ethernet, right?
Not necessarily. It depends. A lot of the places that we have, that we find the venues, don't have hardwired. You need roughly a 4 megabit connection to do a 720p, and that's usually doable.
Emphasize that is, we're talking about the cameras. The club itself, unless you're going to project, just needs a reception computer.
That's right.
Hooked to your monitor.
And the camera can be off the laptop. It's not rocket science. It doesn't-
Yeah, a quick question in the audience here. Pass the microphone.
Microphone.
I'm Jim Ellsworth from Florida. We want to scrap our entire video audio system and start over because we've got antiquated equipment. But one of our goals, we do a demo at every meeting, and we use our own members to do those demos. We want to be able to do a CD of every demo. can you do a CD with the system
Well-
you've got set up here?
So let me refine the wording. No, it's not that you're going to do a CD. The question is, can you record? Because CDs, DVDs are pretty much obsolete technologies now. But the point is, the question is, can you record? And the answer is yes, I'm recording this session. And I'll be happy to show people later on what the recording. You can record, you can stream, you can go external, you can just treat whatever's coming out here as if it was a webcam, to send it out via Skype or Zoom or anything that'll accept a webcam input. But getting back to what Lyle was saying is that I've taken on a couple of demonstrators in a mentoring role, because the more people that know how to do this and the more clubs that set up to receive, then it means that more demonstrators are likely to learn how to do this. It's just another skill set. In fact, one of the things that is different, that my recommendation is that the woodturners, the demonstrators, learn to maneuver their own cameras. You're not relying on a camera person, because you know the next shot that you need. You know where your chisel is going to be next. You know what would be the right thing for the next shot. And for you to try to talk to typically an inexperienced camera operator for the club, I can move the camera faster than I can tell somebody where I want to move the camera to. So this is something, and obviously if you're in your own shop, you want to be able to do that very, very easily. And so so that's another skill to learn, is how to maneuver the camera, how to set focus and things like that. But these are not difficult things to learn at all. So Lyle took advantage of time difference. When was it, about 2 months ago?
Mm-hmm.
And what you did, which two groups?
Oh, it's been a blur. I don't remember which two.
Okay, which states were they in?
That even is a good question. I did one in the Eastern time zone and one in the Pacific time zone, but I don't remember whether one was Oregon. Is it Oregon?
Yeah.
Oregon and Tennessee? I don't know. I don't remember. It's a blur. I've done so many of these. I'm sorry. I can't remember. Well, when I did the England thing, I was in England on Thursday and I was in Hawaii on Saturday. Yeah.
Right. Well, so he was able to take advantage. He was able to take advantage of the 3-hour time difference. You do a 2-hour demo at 7 o'clock Eastern time, take a break for an hour, and then do a 2-hour demo starting at 10 o'clock Eastern time, because that's 7 o'clock on the West Coast. Talk about reach. I mean, this is. I mean, how else could you do this? Now, the other thing that let's switch back over to this camera. The other thing that is useful is that Lauren and I will offer to groups when we demonstrate a thing called a talkback session. So maybe a month or two after the session, to be able to come back and do a very short thing, maybe a half-hour video or 20-minute video, because people will have tried the things that we showed them. Because we're not doing a bowl demo, we're doing jewelry. So they get to try this stuff. And that means that now they've got questions, or maybe they've got stuff to show us, and they want us to critique it or talk about it. So that's a way to follow up, which is quite nice. And now, before he falls asleep, I'm going to switch over to Emiliano, and Emiliano is sitting in a hotel room in Nebraska. It's going to be very exotic, Emiliano, saying we're hooked up to a guy in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. But he had a last-minute trip to Nebraska, so he's sitting in a hotel room in Nebraska, and we're actually using a feature of vMix in one of the editions of vMix that I use called vMix Call. So he actually just logged into a web browser, went to a particular website, typed in a password that I gave him. It asked him, what camera and microphone do you want to use? And so he didn't even have to download Skype or Zoom or anything like that. That's a very cool way of doing it. So Emiliano, you've got a little unique perspective on this, in that you originally set up to receive the demonstrations. Because, being in the middle of the water, that you don't have a whole lot of people to choose from. But then you also set up that same kind of gear in his own shop where this club meets. And we'll show the little video that you made of that. And so you got it from a demonstrator standpoint. So where was the club that you did, and you also do Google Hangout, right?
I do so many things that it's going to be hard to talk about them all, but I did a symposium in Argentina. It was basic wood turning. There was a lot of questions, and I did a simple bowl for them in I had only 3 hours to do it. One of my other things that I do is I do a lot of Facebook Live videos. I'm one of the administrators for a Facebook group of wood turning, Spanish woodturners, Spanish-speaking woodturners from all over the world. Last night we admitted our 12,000 member. So when you do a Facebook Live there, within minutes there is 400 or 500 people watching you. It's hard to answer questions, you can imagine. So you just gotta tune out the questions and just go for it. If you want to stop for a while, read some of the questions and answer, but I mean, sometimes you get 60, 70 questions and it's impossible. One of my favorite things to do is something that I explained to you, Alan, what I was doing, and you said, oh, that is virtual hand holding. That is I give like private lessons to people, friends in Argentina that just a few months ago couldn't do anything. They're doing great things now. Because I showed them, I was like, no, that's not how you do it. Move it here. Okay, now, okay, there. You see the shaving there now coming out? Virtual hand holding. It's one of my favorite things to do. It has opened the shop to the world. Not every day I do it, but hey, guys, what are you doing? It's 4 or 5 of us, somebody in Spain, somebody in Israel. Just unbelievable the possibilities that we have with this technology. I'm very excited about it.
Emiliano, let me show the little quick video of your shop. And
fellow Woodturners, this is Emiliano Achebol making a short video. I want to show my setup when I do live remote interactive demonstrations. This is my shop here in beautiful Maui, Hawaii. My farthest live remote demo that I did was to a symposium in Argentina. Here is my lathe. Above the lathe, I have this contraption here with an arm. I have a Logitech high definition camera right above the lathe that it covers everything there. Then I have one right here on a tripod that I can move it around in and out. So this one will be a little bit stationary. This is the coolest one. This is an old iPhone, an iPhone 6. And as you can see, when I move it around, there you can see the phone. It's in my hand. This is the one I can use to show the inside or a really close up. That's vMix right there. I have a dedicated laptop that I got very inexpensive at Costco with a Pentium i5, so it's more than enough. This is the phone on the tripod. So my setup is 3 cameras and a computer, and also I have a Plantronics wireless microphone in my ear. That way I can use a face mask. I always use a face mask when I do my live demos. All right, I wish I was there in Kansas with you guys. From Maui, aloha.
and so, let me switch back over to this one here. So he's got it at both ends. You know, this is where his club meets. You've had how many remote demonstrations have you received?
We had 4, and actually, when I started doing it, I didn't realize that the equipment could also be used for when we had like Dixie Bigs a few weeks ago. We used it. We used all my equipment. We moved the cameras, and then we have a projector with a big screen, and it's the perfect setup for when somebody's there, especially in the case of Dixie, that she's just stationary at the table, so I could put the phone right next to her. And it was even better than just watching her. You can see in a giant screen what she's actually doing it. It's really, really great setup that we have.
Now, one of the things that we heard from people, and we hear this over and over again, which is a really interesting thing, is that Emiliano, can you talk a little bit about how chatty your group how chatty your group is?
Yeah. When we have somebody there, like let's say Andy Colt came from Honolulu, we had about 23 people watching. Every now and then Andy was like yelling, hey guys, be quiet, come on, come over here. On the other hand, when we had Lyle, everybody's just quiet. Nobody's saying a word. They look like kids in 7th grade paying attention. It's just the greatest thing. We don't know what it is.
And we find this over and over again. People are saying that the people in the audience sit there glued to the monitor. Maybe they'll get up, go to the restroom. They don't want to take breaks. They just want to just keep watching, and it's really rather compelling. I want to Gil. What's that? When the turner is in the room with them, an in-person demo, they get very chatty. But when they're watching a monitor, they just sit quiet. It's like watching a movie, you know. Except you can ask questions, and we can see the audience, which I've got to tell you is not the most compelling video. Watching a bunch of generally guys with gray beards watching a TV screen, it's not enthralling. I want to hand the microphone to Joanne, because Joanne has set up a similar setup on her rig, and let's see, I think Hoyle can go to Joanne. And so Joanne is from British Columbia.
Nope, Alberta.
No, Alberta.
Yeah.
Isn't Alberta in British Columbia?
No.
Oh, shows how much I know.
It's our neighbor.
Okay. So what are you doing with this? And
Well, I'm a little bit of a techie as well, and when I start something, I tend to want all the equipment right off the bat. And so I've been talking with you since February, I guess, and trying to learn how to set up the equipment and everything else. Now, the trouble I've had was mostly connecting to Wi-Fi. We had trouble connecting to Wi-Fi. We don't have enough. Yeah.
Well, was this at your home, or when you were on location?
At my home.
I
did a live stream on Facebook, and then it worked great the first time I did it, and then the second time, instead of and that was with 2 megapixels, I guess you call it.
Right.
And the first time, all I could get was 0.98, and so nothing was coming through on the live stream. And then the next time I tried, and I started working with the vMix, and I did a recording, my first recording, with the videos and stuff, and then try to edit on it, and then put my first video up on YouTube. And so I still just mostly have to adjust to getting used to having a camera on me, and then remembering to talk, remembering that this equipment is around me, and so they're just little things I got to get used to and get back into. But yeah, I think I've downsized it now to 1 camera.
we'll get you going a little more involved. In fact, what I want to do now is I want to show you just a couple of moments of what a typical demo that for me and Lauren is like. So I did this video the other day.
From a typical 2-hour demonstration about making
it's
wood
15
turn
minutes, so
jewelry.
I'm just going to jump in and show
We
you a
usually
couple
do
of
this
things.
via a 2-way, real-time video call with the Woodturning Club. The audience can see and hear us. We can see and hear them, so it's quite interactive. So let's watch a bit of a session we did with a group in New Mexico.
Let me sort of introduce the two of us, and then I'll turn it over to Lauren for a couple of thoughts. We are best known probably for our jewelry and for things like shaving brushes, and I'll show you a little bit about the work.
because the more you sort of understand where we're going with this demonstration, the more the different techniques will start to make sense. So I am in our basement shop. I do not have wood paneling behind me. My actual shop looks like this. And so I don't know how many of you have a green screen behind your lathe, but I find it very handy to be able to look at a particular camera, and then I can actually put myself into any of the pictures. Lauren is upstairs. I'm in the basement of our two-story home, and Lauren is upstairs in her studio. Lauren, why don't you talk a little bit about your approach to wood turning and why you became a wood turner?
Okay, well, my approach to wood turning is a little different than most. I've actually turned a couple of bowls, but I've never had a real desire to do that. I've made vases and pens and stuff like that, but my love is using the wood as canvas. I'm a painter. I love to paint and draw and embellish and use all sorts of interesting materials. And I find that the less figured wood, like maple or some of the other woods that don't have a lot of grain, are really terrific to embellish.
So I'm going to stop there. I'm just going to jump ahead because I'm going to show you sort of different camera setups. So here's an example of, I was talking about why we use our respirators. And for me, I spent more time on the audio than I did on the video configurations, because I'm worst case, because I'm wearing a respirator helmet, which means there's air rushing over my face and over my microphone. And I'm one of the wood turners, and Lauren's the same, that we simply do not turn on the lathe until the respirator helmet is on and our dust collecting is on. We are not we only turn the dust collector on when we're sanding. So in my little room, it sounds like a jet engine is going on. So there are two things that are interesting about this. One is that we use, I'm using a microphone, a headset microphone. If I can just switch to camera 3. This thing here. Because it has very active noise cancellation. It's a really, and just sits in your ear, so it's a speaker and the microphone. And the other thing is that we've got
the way we are. If the lathe is on, the dust collector is on, and
I'll cut that out. I've got a set of noise canceling earbuds. They're made by Bose. And they're really quite impressive. Unfortunately, they're $300. But the interesting thing about this is that I plug it into our phone. So I like listening to music at a low level. And in the event that I found myself on the floor unintentionally, I could just press the button on the pendant and say, Siri, call 911. So I consider this to be a really interesting piece of safety equipment. So that's just a little aside there. Going back to this.
And our respirator helmets are on.
This is an example of me doing...
When we first started doing pendants,
so this way people
one of the things that was interesting to us was to work with very, very interesting types of wood.
Images.
And the wood burning as well,
sometimes we
and
just bring
it just
Lauren
all
in,
came
picture in
together.
picture.
So
And so we sort of tag team.
Brushes.
This is
So let's talk about some tool
connections.
connections. Lauren, why don't you explain what you've got going there?
Okay, I've got a little rig over here. Let's
demo.
see
I can actually, let me turn off the audio on that. So this is her rig upstairs, and she's got a computer with 3 cameras. And then downstairs, I will move one of the cameras from place to place. So when I'm setting up, this is what I call the movable camera. This is the one that's on the stand. Here I'm doing picture-in-picture because I want to show the top view and the side view at the same time. And when I'm setting up to do the next piece, now it's time to go over to Lauren, let her have the screen. And what I can do, you see that black border on the side? And that's because I've got it set up so that I can actually move the images left and right. So sometimes it's just handy to move the image a little bit to get it out of the way of the picture-in-picture. I can move it up and down, I can adjust. And so in this particular case, I was showing the different kinds of things that we demonstrate, doing a raised bead, doing an eccentric thing. Lauren talks about the jewelry and how to take a piece of wood and turn it into jewelry. And then we had, you know, closing comments and all of that. But this gives you an idea how we're two different demonstrators, not located at the same place, yet can act as if we were in the same room. And that's a very handy thing to do. One other very quick thing I want to show you, and then we'll open it up for discussion because we're running short on time, is if we were to look at, say, Emiliano, because we'll put him back on the thing here. Let's go to this here.
Oh, fellow woodturners.
All right, let's assume that we have this, and I'm going to stop this for a minute. Mike Mahoney, I've been sort of mentoring a little bit, and he wants to do a different approach. He's done a lot of DVDs, so he's already pre-recorded really good shots of certain cuts and things like that. So he doesn't need to do a live demo, but he said, well, let me show you how this cut's going to be made. And what he wants to be able to do is annotate it. So if I were to, say, take this off here, and so what I did is I worked out a little system that actually uses an iPad so that if I want to say, oh, look over here, or no, I want to have something over here, or let's move this around, or I really want to do this. So, or I just want to draw on the screen. This is kind of a cool approach to do what would be considered a telestrator. That kind of functionality. And so I'm actually using the iPad as a touch screen. And by using Chromakey, the same kind of technique that we use to drop out the background, I'm just grabbing a section. Let's see if I switch over here. So you should be able, let me see if I do this here. Oh, I've got to come back over here. And so I'm using an iPad, and I put a green background behind the arrow, and then I keyed out the arrow and put it into one of the overlays. So the same way I put myself into a picture, I can put an arrow into a picture. So this is kind of a cool thing. In fact, I showed it at StreamCon about a week ago, and these streamers were like flipped out over that. So as far as the technical side of things, that's sort of what I wanted to show. And so this isn't academic anymore. People are actually doing this stuff. Rebecca DeGroot very often will say, listen, I'm going to go down into my shop. Do you want to watch? We've done this a couple of times. It's not a class, but it's just sharing. Yeah, sharing. That's right. It's exposing people to wood turning, and if that's one of the things that you're trying to do, this is a way of reaching audiences that you were never able to reach before. If you're a program officer in your club, this is a way of bringing in talent. I refer to a lot of clubs. In fact, we have one club that hasn't had anybody new come in the 7 or 8 years that we've been a member. I call it inbreeding. Every once in a while, you need to get new DNA to come in, and this is a way to do it. So let's. It is now that like our hour is up, but I think we're all kind of willing to hang around. I don't think they're throwing us out of here. So let's open it up to questions and comments. In fact, Hannes, also, you're using an iPhone on your demo lathe at the woodworking events and things like that. And it was about 2 years ago I showed you how to do that.
That little adapter, so I can have it on all the time and have full-time video and still keep the phone energized.
Right. And so he can show a cut that would be difficult to do, say with a camcorder or to have a switcher and
well,
such.
I can get the best shot because, like you said, I know where to put the camera. I can put it there instantly. The best thing I've done with this thing so far is I was doing an urn for a family member, and I had a 3.5-inch opening in the top of a typical sized urn, and I was reaching in there with a 1/2-inch gouge because it was grained this way. I was just doing a pull cut to hollow it with my gouge. And I had my tool rest up in there. I had the tool in there. I had the camera right in front of the opening. There's no way I could see in the hole and see the gouge, but I could see it here. And I said, this looks pretty good, so I hit record.
Well, I don't know about you, but anytime someone asks me, anytime someone asks me for a serial number off the back of a piece of equipment, I just grab the camera, grab the phone, take a picture, and then look at it. You know, we don't have to squint so much.
The best comment was, I feel like I'm this big and I'm standing on the end of your tool. Like, if that person can watch a video on Facebook and get inside my work, I think I accomplished something
That's
good.
a nice thing. All right, so let's pass the microphone around. So who's got some questions or comments? Lauren?
What I hope to take back with me, or get from you ultimately, is a precise list of what we need to buy: camera, whatever software you've got in the machine, whatever other piece of equipment we need to buy, because we don't understand a damn thing.
Well, at last year's session, which is up on the AAW video site on Vimeo, there is a link to a resource sheet there which showed all of the equipment that I used in the demo. There have been some slight changes to the cameras, but if you contact me, my email address is well, I'll put it up because it was at the end of the video. It's
well, that's not this thing you put out.
No. No, this is no. If you I've got a full resource sheet, but you can. Whoops! No, don't start over again.
I encourage you to find his YouTube video from last year's session.
You got to be careful when you call Alan, though. You better have a lunch by, because it's going to be a while. He'll give you the whole story, so don't worry about.
But there's my email address, and the thing is that you may already have some equipment. You may already have a notebook computer or so. Some people use notebook computers. There's groups in Texas. I think 4 clubs had already set up something like this. They saw the video from last year, and they said, how did you do the thing with the keyboard and such? So we sent them the shortcut list and such. So I'm in it just to help people get up to speed with this stuff. And as I've helped Joanne, I've helped a bunch of other people. So the gentleman with the microphone.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Al Merman, when you did the Santa Fe Woodturners demonstration on the screen
Yes, speak
there-
into the mic.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
When you did the demonstration with the Santa Fe Woodturners, so that was with a group, and we keep talking about group interaction with a demo. What about if I, as an individual, wanted to be able to have access to any demonstration around the world? Could I gather in a list of available demonstrations and have my own setup in-house that I could switch and pick and choose from?
Well, there's a couple of things. One is that there's an initiative that I'm involved with here at the AAW to come up with a directory of demonstrators. And one of the fields in there would be, is this demonstration available remotely? Just as, when does the demonstrator travel, where are they located, et cetera, et cetera. So that's being worked on. That's being actively worked on. Demonstrators can, there are piano teachers that are not sitting on the bench next to their student anymore. They're having little webcams and watching this. One-on-one tutorials are becoming available. Think of it as a video phone call. Grandmas are having video phone calls with their grandchildren. This isn't extraordinary anymore. And whether somebody does a single camera, like what Roper's doing, or bizarre stuff with green screens and multiple cameras and multiple users and all of that. Oh, there we are. This is like 2 different extreme ends of the spectrum, and you do whatever you're comfortable with. I was proud. I was proud of Lyle when I showed him how to put title at the bottom, and so the next time he had titles and called lower thirds, where you have, like at a news briefing. Tom, someone hand Tom the microphone? Oh, he's got the microphone.
A couple comments. One is that we had Lyle do a demonstration for us, and it was absolutely stone silent.
In the room.
Were they asleep or
no? They were, as you said, they were riveted. It was worth every minute of the time that it took to set it up. My second comment is, we need more demonstrators doing this. I mean, we fight trying to get a demonstrator to come to little old lowly Delaware that's 50 miles from Philadelphia. You'd think somebody'd come by every day, but they don't. So,
well, let me put some perspective on that from my viewpoint, or as a demonstrator. There was a comment, I forget who made it now, I can do a better video if I'm standing there. I can do a better show, a better production with my tools and my shop and my cameras than I could if I were in your shop. Okay? So the quality is there, and the comments that I've been getting, thank you for the feedback, the comments that I've been getting are just overwhelmingly good. Everybody has had a good experience with it. I am very actively involved with the audience. One of the weak spots that I've found in my production or my link with the clubs is their audio to me. I have a hard time hearing their questions, and I ask for feedback from the audience. I take polls now and then. I get questions back and forth. We take little side trails of different topics because of the questions, and it's all active, it's all live, and I get the response when I'm done. It's just like you were here. And so it's working. And I'm doing it in a very simple, very basic way. I'm not using all this complicated stuff that these guys were talking about. Well, maybe I'm using it, but I don't know anything about it. Okay.
Alan, can you hear me?
Yeah, well, let me switch to Emiliano. Hey there.
That is hello. That is something that I need to work on too. When somebody on the other side, like when I did the demo for the Argentinian symposium, they were not prepared. I could not hear them. They only had the microphone in the in the computer, which was in another room. We have to work on something where a microphone that can grab more audio, not just one of those mics that you hold, but we have to work on something for like Lyle and me, so we can be more interactive with the audience. You know, you make a joke and you're like, okay, are you guys laughing? You know, it's.
No, you're probably hearing the accurate audio. That silence is commentary on the joke.
No. And I do a test before each.
Go ahead.
One last thing. The AAW is always looking for ways of making revenue. I'll give you $100 if you can sneak in with all your equipment tomorrow, and you can show me Richard Raffan's last appearance in.
Well, but now that's an interesting point, and we'll get to you in a second. One of the questions is, when you're arranging this, and whether it be a remote video or in person or on site, is you know, are you allowed to record? If you are allowed to record, who is allowed to see it? Because you don't want, you know, this intellectual property, you don't want to record somebody's 2-hour session, put it up on YouTube, and now all of a sudden the demonstrator has nothing left to sell. But in people that come, say, to our club, New Jersey Woodturners, more often than not, the agreement is with the turner that will record it, but only those people that are members of the club that weren't able to attend could view it. And that's a reasonable use. But these are the kinds of things that you would negotiate with the demonstrator to have a fair use, and you stick to it. I mean, that's an important thing, because you don't want the demonstrators to be taken advantage of, and you also want to pay the demonstrators fairly. We charge pretty much the same as what we would have charged if we had to go someplace. Because let's face it, most demonstrators aren't being paid for their travel time and their prep time and their packing time. They're being paid for the demo, and so that should continue. But now you don't have all of those travel expenses, lodging expenses, baggage expenses, all of that stuff. So that's important. Lyle, do you remember where you were going? before I sidetrack.
No, I guess, when I started YouTube, I said, well, wait a minute. I'm going to give it away on YouTube. I'm making a living at this. I'm selling DVDs. I'm teaching live, and now I'm going to give it away on YouTube. Wait, do I really want to do this? It's the best thing that I ever did. It's just made my business go crazy. And the same thing is happening now with the live things. It's a way to reach you people, and it's a way for you to get a big name turner in without having to pay the big bucks. And you can't hire a big name turner for any amount of money to come in for 2 hours. You got to get him there for 3 or 4 days or he's not going to show up. So, it's a way to really allow us to get the information we want out to you and help you grow as turners and your techniques and things and do it economically.
What you do is you develop a portfolio, things you give away, things you sell. They could be teasers for the type of work that you do. Even for something like a symposium like this, it would be not a really good thing to take, say, Richard Raffin's or Jimmy Clue's session and put it on YouTube. But panel discussions like this one, how to photograph your work, where it's not just one person spilling their guts. It's this collaboration that we're having, and hearing comments from the audience. You've been waiting very patiently, so your comment.
Two things.
Your name.
My name is Joe Fleming. You and I talked. He gave me 15 minutes, and
Hello.
I got an hour.
Hey, Joe.
Or more. I don't remember.
Hello, Joe.
So this is the first time we actually met face to face. And I ran with that a little bit. I didn't buy any equipment. My wife is a CPA, and she is the budget committee. As you can imagine, with a tool junkie like me, it's really hard. But what I did just to play, to try stuff out, is I used my digital SLR camera and plugged it into I did this at lunchtime one day at work. So I have a day job. And I plugged in at work, and I used the webcam on the laptop and this camera, and I didn't buy that software yet. I found something on the web where I could toggle back and forth, and I was able to do 2 cameras with me eating lunch. So that was the demo I gave for myself that day. But I was able to make it work. So it's doable. The comment that Lyle made, I think, is really important. I do have a day job. I got asked to do a demonstration this past spring in Syracuse the week after, is it Totally Turning? I'm a vendor also, and I was thinking of going to Totally Turning, and then they said, well, come the next week. Well, I can't take a whole week off for vacation to hang around to do a demo to save somebody $500, because that's costing me thousands of dollars as my day job. This is going to be my ticket to be able to get out there easier for people.
I absolutely agree. This enables people to connect. I mean, for all we know, there might be some turner in Antarctica who's tired of talking to the penguins, outside his door, and to be able to reach across the continent. In fact, what was funny was we went to one of these woodworking shows back in February, and we were coming back, and we stopped by a little restaurant, Lauren and I, and as we're sitting down, we just ordered, I get a phone call on my cell phone from Emiliano. He said, listen, I know how to get vMix to go out to act as if it was a webcam, but I don't know how to get it to work on the projector. Because it's showing my vMix screen. And I said, okay, Lauren, I'm going to go outside, and I stand in the parking lot, and about 30 seconds later, I said, okay, you click on your desktop, you right-click here, you extend the display, and you hit the full screen button. And he said, he did it. He says, you're a hero. And I said, okay, I'm going back to dinner. Your people are arriving. And the whole idea that somebody could just call you on the cell phone 5,000 miles away and just answer to a question because you happened to connect with somebody who knew the answer. Collectively, the people in this organization know just about everything there is to know about wood turning. I happen to know a lot about these kinds of toys. Other people know about other things that I'm interested in. So this collaboration, this crowdsourcing, we all have our strengths. I mean, I was born without the sports chromosome, so I don't get that stuff. But other people are really into that, and they can bring that perspective to it. And so your use cases, they may be very different than our use case, but I just think that we're problem solvers. More questions from the audience? Oh, wait. Gil, one second. Let me, let's see, can you grab Gil? Okay. Talk to me, Gil. Gil, by the way, Gil has come to our house and looked at our setup and stuff like that.
Yes, thank you very much.
Just pull the mic a little closer, please.
I just recently was in Puerto Rico, and I have a tech cousin. We were talking about all that we've shared. He mentioned another piece of equipment. I'm throwing it out to you, a security camera with 4 observation cameras. Would that be something that...
Typically, the security camera, most of the security cameras I've seen are not high definition, but some of them are. And some of them will record, but most of these are designed for distance and don't focus. So you want to focus something that's like 5 inches away or 10 inches away, they are generally not the right tool. Some of them might be. So I'd be interested to see. Yeah, they could be recording. In my software here, I could actually be recording recording the virtually all of the cameras independent, but that's another another issue. I'll just show you very briefly what I'm looking at for those people that have never seen this before. I'll do a local desktop capture of display 1. So what I'm doing, and this is going to have some cascading stuff here. What I've got here is on the upper left corner is what's called a preview. On the upper right corner is what I'm actually sending to the monitor. So the reason it's cascading is because it's seeing what I'm sending to the monitor, sending to the monitor. It's kind of like being in a barbershop with multiple mirrors. At the bottom here, we've got all the inputs. So I've got my camera inputs, I've got the video inputs. I've actually broke them out into little tabs here. So I've got a tab for Lyle, a tab for Emiliano, a tab for Roper, for Lauren and me. By the way, this little video here was one that Lauren did for the AAW Discover Woodturning program on the anatomy of a wood lathe. That's already had over 1,000 views on the AAW site. I've got the Waltz pictures here, so I can group them easily, and I can switch between them. I can change cameras here. I can use a little keyboard. Lyle, if you just hold up that little device there. I'm playing with this. Is called an X keys, which gives me 24 keys that I can label to be able to say I want to play a particular video or whatever. So just one key press. But I wanted to make it really easy, particularly for what I'll call an unskilled operator. Someone that doesn't do this all the time. Press number 1 for camera 1, press number 2 for camera 2, press the thing underneath the 1. So if I go to camera 1 here, if I press the thing underneath the 1, the Q, it takes camera 1 and puts it into the inset. If I press the one underneath that in that vertical column, it zooms camera 1 in, zooms camera 1 out. Now we don't have optical zooms, but within some reason, if you're doing a 720p output and you've got a 1080p camera, you can come in about 25% before you get into the digital zoom degrading of the image. And sometimes that's just enough for you to zoom in on something for a few seconds, and then you want to kind of zoom back out again. By the way, if you ever do this and you go too far, you wind up upside down. And the first time that happened to me, I said, what in the world did I do there? So that's you know.
Wow.
And yeah. There was a question?
Oh, Emilio, maybe.
Oh, Emilio.
No, I said,
Emiliano.
wow.
Yeah, wait. Let me
I'm
go.
glad I never did that.
Yeah, well, no, the word is yet, Emiliano.
Yet.
Yeah. So let me.
Well, if he did, he would have called you.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
That is true. One of the first phone calls I had with Lyle, he had to go run a cable from his shop to the house, and I took off my headset and I put my headset on mute. There's a telephone headset. I come back, he can't hear me. I'm trying to figure out what in the world's going on. I flipped the mute switch on. He had one that was driving us both crazy. He uses an external microphone, a little wireless microphone. And we had tested it out and everything was working fine. He says, I can't get the microphone to work. And I'm looking, and one of the things about using Zoom is you can actually look at their screen and you can look over their shoulder. And I'm saying, my goodness, it just won't let you. I don't see the microphone. Well, he had it plugged into the headphone port, and he probably won't do that again. And maybe that's my doorbell at home. So the thing is that everything that happens to anybody will happen to everybody. It's like you're going to get the same catch that everybody else got on the lathe. You're going to measure something wrong. You're going to make the same mistakes that everybody else makes. Hopefully, if you see somebody else make the mistake, maybe you won't make it, or you should only do the mistake 2 or 3 times to make sure you got it right before you stop. But don't be surprised if it's not perfect the first time you do it. Roper, you have a question?
I do, real quick. With the setup today, I posted some videos. I posted a lot of photographs on Facebook, LinkedIn, some of the other sites. And there was a discussion on one of the pages about how expensive it is to be able to come to one of these events. Now, we all know that coming to one of these events can really change your woodturning career, but they're not cheap. It took me 5 or 6 years before I could save enough money to come to one of these. Now, is it possible, or would the AAW be interested in finding a way that they could set these up to where they could still sell a spot where you could watch the demonstrations remotely without having to pay so much to physically come to one of these locations?
Well, these are things that are being discussed, and obviously one of the realization, I used to work for a very large computer hardware and software company, and I wanted to stream the keynote addresses because it was embarrassing when our customers heard about new announcements before the employees heard about the new announcements, because they were at the keynote address. And so, and the overwhelming majority of the employees could not attend the conference. You have like 30,000 employees, and there'd be like 3,000 of them at the conference. So the overwhelming majority of the AW members simply will not be at the symposium. Actually, I'll switch over to this camera. And so the question is, how can they be involved? Whether it be live streaming of certain events, like the panel discussions we talked about before, the logistics of live streaming 10 events going on at one time, because we've got like 10 rotations going on, that's a logistical nightmare. But maybe one can, if they record the demonstrations, then maybe they'd be able to make them available to members later on, or in a pay-per-view kind of thing. At StreamCon, we talked about different pay-per-view options. But one thing that's really interesting, when it comes down to pay-per-view, as soon as somebody puts out $1 to pay for a video, it'd be a good video. There's no excuses. If it's free, you get what you pay for. But you pay $1, now it's expected to be done right. And doing it right, particularly with volunteers, is a difficult thing to do. We once, at the company, we hired a video production company to video record 12 of our 100 sessions. We only got 2 of them. They failed. They're professionals. Imagine what would happen if we had a bunch of volunteers trying to get it all working. Over time, this will happen, but you're absolutely right. How do you reach people knowing that they can't come? Most people cannot come here. And it's not necessarily just the money for the registration. It's the time off from work, it's the travel, it's the big commitment, and it's not a trivial thing to come here. So how do you engage your members? And these are actually initiatives that the AAW has, and I don't have answers at this point, but I'm sure that they would love for you to be part of the discussion. And this is important. Let's Lyle, and then pass the mic over that way.
Let me take a poll. I'm going to cover the other side of the coin. Would you be willing or want to see me in a demo from Michigan from an AAW seat here? You're already at the symposium. Rather than seeing somebody at the lathe, would you watch a live demo of me, live interactive now, asking questions and answering things? Would you be willing or want to do that? Would that be acceptable in your, show of hands?
From my couch.
From where? No, from here. You're already in AAW, and I'm going to do a demo, but I don't want to drive to Portland. And I'm in Australia. I'm Richard Raffin. Wouldn't you like to see Richard Raffin in Australia so he doesn't have to fly here? And
good idea.
But this is the point.
But at AAW, wouldn't AAW want to have, a big name here, live, interactively, rather than standing here?
But this is the point. There may be demonstrators that cannot afford to come here, cannot afford the time, et cetera, to do this. And with us, when Lauren and I demonstrate, we're working on things that are this big. People are glued to the monitor. They can't watch what's going on the lathe. They've got to be looking at the monitor. If they're looking at the monitor all the time anyway, I don't need to be in the room. It's the same experience, except now they're watching me sharpen on my belt grinder. Now they're watching me work with my tools in my shop, looking around my shop, thinking about what could be good for them. It's a different experience. It's not necessarily a replacement, but it's an addition, particularly for those people, as I said, it's better if they're in person, but what if they're not going to get there? How can you invite somebody in? Emiliano couldn't be here, and the idea that we can bring him in remotely, and he's still sitting there, be able to bring in people remotely that simply cannot be here, or in your club, where you've got people that are members of your club, but your secretary broke her leg and she's in the hospital. Why can't she watch from her hospital bed? I know people that belong to clubs and they say, we never go to club meetings because I can't drive at night. How do you serve people that are not currently being well served? How do you get people to connect with demonstrators, whether it be kind of professional demonstrators, amateur demonstrators? How do you get people that are novice demonstrators to be able to demonstrate without the commitment of a club, contracting them? They can practice on YouTube. They can practice on Facebook. They can get, it's like stand-up comedian. You practice in the cheap seats first, and before you set yourself up for prime time. So in a lot of these venues, even if the turner is there, you're watching the screen. Now, one of the things that's interesting, there are some clubs that if you're not throwing shavings, they don't want you. Very simple. In fact, one club, I forget which one it was, is that we had like 2 or 3 in a row where nobody was throwing shavings. So when the next person came in, they weren't going to throw shavings either, so they just threw potato chips on the crowd. Just to say, we give you something to clean up afterwards. But what was kind of cool is that we had a group recently that we demonstrated to, and I said, what was the feedback from the group? And they said, we'd like to do another session, but if you don't mind, just with Lauren. And so because they wanted to drill down on the embellishment side of things, they already know how to do wood turning. For me, the turning portion of it, of what we do, is the least interesting part. You know, I may show you some tools and techniques that you're not used to, but once you sort of get that, it's like, okay, now, but what she's doing with the inking and making jewelry and such, that's what I call not another bowl demo. So this is really interesting. So the fact that they want to continue that is showing that that's a club that's looking for something a little different. So what Lyle's question, you don't necessarily need answers, but it's food for thought. If you don't want to see it, why don't you want to see it? And does it mean that you only want to see people that'll travel? And there are people that they cannot or don't want to travel. Hoyle, can you point the camera down that way? Thank you. That's good.
My name is Jerry Witt from Arizona. One response to Lyle's question is that, yeah, if I was here, if I had paid to come to the symposium, I wouldn't mind if you were somewhere else. But as a club member, and as a board member for that club, if I can pay your fee and make that content available to my whole membership, it's kind of the same deal. I mean, I can be a hog and just come here, and if I can afford it, and there's a half a dozen members from our club here that would have, access to it, and that'd be acceptable. Because as you said, you do a better demonstration from your own shop than you do certainly from some lathe put up in the front of a conference room.
Yeah, but it's a balancing act, because you don't want to necessarily cannibalize the attendance here. But on the other hand, you just recognize that the overwhelming majority of the woodturners in the world are simply not going to be here. They can't be here. They live overseas. You can name the people that come in from overseas, or they have full-time jobs and they can't take off, or whatever, or they're sick or whatever. How do you serve people that are not currently being well served? And so when Andy Sullivan's in the back of the room, and by the way, Andy, I did make a plea for for volunteers for the lighthouse pen turning thing, and hopefully some people will take you up on that and see her with the blonde hair and such. For me, reaching out to people that are having difficulty accessing a lathe or being introduced to a lathe, if you're not currently being well served, what can we do to fix that? How can we educate people? Pass the microphone over this way, please.
Well, I didn't get to ask my question.
The second microphone is there.
I didn't get to ask my question. How did you connect the iPad to your setup to do annotation?
I'm using a program called Duet. It's an app that runs on the iPad. I can actually show it to you very, very briefly. I think I did about here.
And draw the arrow.
I'm going to turn off the audio.
Here.
I think it looks over here. Okay, so this is an example of the setup over my lathe. So I've got the iPad on the right-hand side. I've got a driver called Duet Display running on the computer. So when I plug this in just through USB, it turns it into a touch screen, and I extend the display, and I put the software on the other. It's just like dragging it to another monitor, and then I'll just jump ahead. So I've got just a green graphic there. I capture it. I do a desktop capture. I zoom in a little bit, and then I key out the background. See if I can just show you that. So we remove the background just by pointing vMix at the background, saying we want to remove it, and we refine it, and then I just put it in the overlay, and it's very, very simple, and it works very, very well.
Thank you.
And it doesn't cost $500 to $1,000. Question over there.
Okay, this may be a stretch, but I'm just curious if there's been any thought about this. You know, in all the discussion here that I've heard tonight, you have the demonstrator doing his or her demonstration, and then you have the audience watching the demonstrator do what he's doing, and then there's this interactive response with questions on a real-time basis.
Yep.
Have you ever considered, or has there ever been the thought about, like I said, this may be a stretch, but all ideas sometimes, you know, they start with crazy things. But have you guys ever thought of teaching where the demonstrator was not the professional, but the demonstrator was the student, and the teacher was watching the students and enabling teaching to the students from afar?
Yeah, we mentioned that a little earlier, doing one-on-one stuff, and like piano teachers are
But I'm
watching
talking
this
about
student.
wood turning.
No,
Well, that's a little different.
No, it's true. What you can't do is you can't like just grab the end of the chisel and raise it up a little bit.
Right.
But-
Physically, you can't do that,
Right.
but you could
You could
point
mentor
out-
people, absolutely, absolutely, and you could mentor somebody on the other side of the world.
Well, has any of that been actually done?
I haven't heard of it, but there's no reason why it shouldn't be done. Emiliano, okay, Emiliano, let me find you. Let me find you here. Tell us about, you do this with your Argentinian friends?
Well, yes, hand thread chasing, the motion, I tell my friends, okay, put the phone, and you should see the contraptions that they make, just like Roper, but Roper's looks like scientific what he made. Imagine 2x4s and broomsticks and duct tape above the lathe, and the motion to do the hand chasing, I can correct them from 6,000 miles away, because the tendency that people have is to just leave the tool stationary and not just lifting it up. So it's been done. I can teach you how to do hand chase threads in your studio, and I can be directing you from my home in Maui.
So, yeah, and we're anxious to find out who you're going to teach or what someone's going to teach you. So, yes, to volunteer to be a student and contact, you know, me or Lyle or Emiliano, or, you know, reach out and you know, some of this stuff is just done on a consultative basis. Some of this is just done on a collegiate basis, and some of it would be done on a tutorial, a paid basis.
Well, we could tell Emiliano that I also have a stubby 750.
All right, and Joe Fleming too.
More questions? We're running late, and I'm fine, but I don't know. Other people may have some other things. Roper?
I just wanted to say one last thing.
Give Roper a microphone, please.
To answer Lyle's question, I'm all about learning how to do this. If I was in my home or in my club, I would go and see a remote demonstration. There's something about coming to a symposium that you want to physically see, be able to meet a demonstrator, be able to personally connect with that person. To me, that's just what the experience is about, that I probably would avoid a Skyped-in demonstration if I were to travel 600 or 1,000 miles to a big show like this.
But we're not necessarily talking about everybody. If you had 15 demonstrators and you brought in 2 remotely that simply could not come here, would you not go to their session because they're coming in remotely?
To me, that would mean there was 13 demonstrators. And I'm just saying that because of the time I have spent to get here, and that, you know, to me, it's about the camaraderie of meeting these other people.
I understand
and
that.
that's why I come here.
Okay.
And that's just me personally. Can't hug a camera.
One of the complaints that I have, and I get very few complaints. I think this is the only one I can ever remember now that I think about it, but and lots of great comments about it. But one of the complaints I get is that you couldn't come up at the break and talk to me and ask me a question. And so what I do at the beginning of the demo, I say, we're going to have a break, but you can't come up and talk to me. If I were standing in your shop and you came up to talk to me at the break, I would say, I'm not going to answer that question. I'm going to wait till the session's back because I want everybody to hear the answer.
Right.
Okay? So to pass it around, David, did I connect with the people there as if I was, I mean, I get that comment all the time. It's just as if you were here.
Except he's taller in real life. And the screen is only about yay tall.
So it's working.
Pass the mic over this way, please. Oh, you got one? He's fast.
I think he said something earlier about the generation that's connected to their phone These are the 20-year-olds that go around like this.
Always looking down.
Are, in your opinion, anybody, are we embarking on a set of criteria that's going to attract the 20, 25, 30-year-olds, you think?
I hope so.
We have a real problem. You got to be at least 100 to be in our club.
You don't have gray hair. You got a microphone?
Yeah.
I've been the youngest guy at these symposiums for the last 6 or 7 years.
Yeah, and you've got gray hair.
At this rate.
David? Wait, I don't hear. Is the microphone turned on?
Right, okay.
That's
Can I
right.
answer that question about the youngsters? If you look at YouTube these days, you've got a lot of the younger guys, the sort of 18 to 30-year-olds, who are getting obscene amount of views, like millions of views. You know, I've always said that I'd like to get at least 1% of their views on my music videos. So yeah, we are reaching those people. More and more people are seeing what Woodturning is about. As everybody has said, you're putting it out to a bigger audience, a wider audience, and one which is quite frankly neglected by everybody, including the AAW, because we hit them when they're young, we hit them when they're older, but not in the middle. And YouTube, Facebook, and everything else is attracting that audience. So yeah, we are doing a good job at that, I think.
Yeah. Joanne, did you have a comment there?
No, but there is a lot of younger ones coming out that I've noticed on YouTube.
Microphone, please.
Sorry.
Lift it up. You can do it.
Home with my equipment. I'm finding that they are attracting them. Like this week I spent on the road in Glendon, this young chainsaw carver, and my ability to show him the videos that had been done through live streaming and such whatever caught his interest, because he was asking just as many questions about how I did that, or how they did that to show a demonstration, and so that he could incorporate in his own craft. Now he wants his lathe. This winter he's going to get his lathe. We're going to get him started, get him in touch with the woodturners in his area. And so, yeah, I think it does make a huge difference. It attracts that young crowd.
Yep. Pass it back.
Okay, I have one other question maybe. We're attracting younger members, hopefully. Younger people that are supposedly interested and can. Do we have to change what we're turning? I mean, for an older person, doing your first bowl is great. Probably for one of these young kids, they can do that in about 4 minutes, good or bad.
You'll learn to
and
turn
they're
fidget
done with
spinners.
bowls. Yeah. So is there
spinners? Yeah.
Yeah. Do we do spinners? Yeah. Is there a group of products or outputs that are unusual that we need to be looking at?
Well, I'm seeing two. I can break the YouTube audience down into the turning world of YouTube audience down into two categories. One that's looking to be entertained with the project, and another that's looking to be educated with the process. And they're really quite separate from another. I mean, Carl Jacobson's with thousands, hundreds of thousands of subscribers and millions of views, doing project-oriented things. He doesn't even talk anymore. It's just the music in the background, and he's just doing a project, you know. But look at the success that he has. It's enormous, okay? And then I'm on the other hand, I'm on the other side of that coin where I want to educate.
Now,
so, you know, there's two different
it also depends. When we did we demonstrated at the AAW Symposium in Tampa in 2013, and we did our jewelry demo, and we did our first session was a Friday afternoon at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and our second session was Saturday morning at 8:30 in the morning, and the room was filled both times, overflowing. And as the people are coming in at 8 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, I said to them, why in the world are you here at 8 o'clock in the morning? That guy raises his hand and says, my wife made me come. because she wanted him to turn jewelry. So one of the things that you want to find out is, what is it that the people in the turners' lives are interested in? But we've learned not to to give one of our sons necklaces for his girlfriends because they wind up leaving after they get the necklace. 4 times, 4 times. But the point is, you find out what the people want either for themselves or, more importantly, to give as gifts. If you make a bowl, or we make spheres. I've got a sphere going, a couple of spheres in the instant gallery. I've got one on a 3D printed coil, and so sometimes you just want to do something that's interesting. And the spheres are a good example, or hollow forms. I've just referred to them as a technical term. They're dust collectors, because they're not a functional bowl. You're not going to. What do you do? It's nice to look at, and dust. So sometimes that's all it is. You're making something that people enjoy viscerally, and sometimes you're going to make something that they're going to hold in their hand and they're going to use on a daily basis, whether it be a pen or a shaving brush or a makeup brush or a candlestick or a wand or whatever it is. Whatever it is that number one, you enjoy making. And then you have to figure out if you want to market that you're making it, whether market it to sell or market it to say, I've developed a technique that other demonstrators would be interested in. Because we're not worried about other people doing jewelry like we do. Lauren's ink work is unique enough that not a whole lot of people are going to do that, but they like learning the process and then adapting some of it to their own work. And so I think that's a really good question as to what would you want to teach, and is it audience specific? I don't think we're turning bongs and things like that for younger audiences. That'd be the glass blowers out there.
Something new that's come is fidget spinners.
That's right, fidget spinners. Well, that's the darling of the 3D printing communities.
Well, it's also in the woodturning community also.
Oh yeah, I've seen some of that, and. Yeah, so I was talking to Andy Chen earlier, who is a segmented woodturner, and when I work with wood filament in the 3D printer, I've got 3 3D printers, and I've got one where it's a single strand of filament that goes around and around and around and around. It makes a bowl that's a 1/40th of an inch thick. I'm a pretty good turner. I can't turn a bowl consistently a 1/40th of an inch thick, 4/10 of a millimeter thick. And so I said to him, this is like ultra micro segmented wood turning. Because instead of taking a piece of wood, gluing it to another piece of wood, and gluing it to make a ring, I'm taking a piece of sawdust, gluing it to another piece of sawdust. And that's exactly what it is,
I can make them that thin, but it's only about that long.
Oh, well, yeah, my bowl is about that tall. But the idea is that, and this is 30% wood, real wood. It smells like wood and all that. My point is, a lot of us are in it for the toys. We like the tools. We like experimenting with techniques, and so things like this is breaking new ground. How do you combine conventional wood turning with unconventional techniques? You'll see in the instant gallery, I've got this coil. I don't have an easy picture of it here. It's on a little rotating stand, you'll see.
No, it's not.
It's not? You didn't put it on the stand?
The other one.
Oh, all right. So what happens is it's a coil that would be difficult, if not impossible, to do with conventional wood turning techniques. So I'm looking to explore the boundaries of what I can do to accentuate or to complement the wood turning, and so that's the kind of thing that's again, I'll call it not another bowl demo. I love watching bowl demos, but it's also nice to see something that you haven't seen before. More questions?
Should close it down.
What? Back?
Do you have a video of that process on YouTube or someplace? Say again? He just talked about his 3D printer doing the wood coil.
I think I've got some of it. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah.
Spiral tool, I think, is on.
Yeah, I've got a picture of the spiral on YouTube, but I actually I've got a little video someplace. I didn't load it into my preset here.
Okay.
That shows a spiral that I did. That was supposed to be a vase that tall, and the spiral failed about halfway up. And so it had a flat top and all these nice radial designs on it. And so I took a rotary tool and I carved out each one of the wings on the spiral, and I used it as a pedestal for a bowl. And afterwards, I'll show it to you. And so people said, "Did you turn this thing? Because it's got this intricate spiral." I said, "No, I carved it." And because there was no turning involved, and I did carve it, you know. So there's something about the whole truth and nothing but the truth. I didn't follow that part.
It seems like you've hit a nerve there, to me at least, because it seems like everybody that's 19 years old has a 3D printer or 3.
Yeah, I've got 3. I'm trying to breed them. But it's really kind of funny though, and you'll get this when we turn spheres. We like using a Vermec jig, and what people said. One guy who turns manually, he said, "Well, that's cheating." Then they say the same thing about carbide tools and all that. And I said to him, you know, actually, putting a piece of wood on a lathe that spins around to make something round, that's cheating. Anybody can make something round if the machine is spinning something around. You just go stab it with a chisel. I said, for that matter, you connect up your lathe to electricity. I mean, why don't you have a treadle? Why aren't you sitting with a block of wood in your lap and carving that bowl? You're cheating. It's just a matter of which tools you decide isn't cheating, you know.
Also,
you go ahead.
I was going to say, any tool that gets me to my embellishment faster is what I want. So any jig or anything that'll teach me and get me there faster, yay.
Does it matter whether an artist uses a pencil or a computer?
No.
A
Just
poet,
another tool.
let me say a poet. If a poet uses a pencil or a computer,
Lauren,
it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Microphone back that way. By the way, I'm really impressed with the AAW for having such good audiovisual equipment.
The same point she's making there is what we're trying to do.
Can you just sit down, because your head's being lopped off, and it'd be nice to see your head.
The same point she's making there with speeding up her process of embellishing is the same thing we're talking about here. We're talking about speeding up the process of spreading information to other woodturners. We're in the step process from the videos that I started out making, watching them, and I've had the privilege of studying other people who have made videos. Watching them in person is different than watching the video, because you do have some of the feedback. We're taking the process from the videos to the teaching process and spreading it to the internet and making it much more available to a wider audience. And in the process, hopefully more people will be able to gain from the experience that the people that are like in this room have gained.
I absolutely agree. It's you know, it's about sharing. It's about extending. For most of us, this is a hobby. I mean, I used to kid people and say, if I was a professional turner, I wouldn't be able to afford to have wood turning as a hobby. But wood turning is one of my many interests, and they don't call it the vortex for nothing. It sucks you in, but so does 3D printing, so does riding a motorcycle. Thank goodness I don't own a boat or a plane or a helicopter, because, you know, these are all time sinks. But the being able to share with people, and believe me, I love meeting with woodturners and swapping stories with them and going out to dinner with them. You know, we are, in the world of woodworking, this is a road less traveled. This isn't furniture making, this isn't cabinetry, this isn't, you know, putting up walls and such. This is a niche market. And then within the niche market, there are niche markets. So woodturners are kind of weird people to begin with, you know, because they didn't go the mainstream woodworking route. And by virtue of that fact, they're kind of interesting people and willing to share. In general, I mean, trades have trade secrets. You know, Coke doesn't tell Pepsi anything. And people are very protective about trade secrets. Professionals, on the other hand, teach. A doctor who perfects a surgical technique doesn't say, I'm not going to tell anybody how I do this or that I do this, and my nurses are under non-disclosure and not allowed to work for anybody for 2 years after they leave me. No, they go to symposia and they teach, they publish, they show everybody how to do everything they know how to do. Now, whether or not somebody else is capable of doing it, that's not the issue. But spreading the information around is the issue. And educating people, and professionals teach. And I love the collegiate feel of the AAW and what they're trying to foster. And so this fits right in. This is just another way of doing it. Any other questions before they throw us out of here?
They just
Thank you. They locked us in. Thank you, everybody.